Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly, as we hear from John and Wai-Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Well, hello everyone. It is John Pollock and Wai-Ting following what might be the longest edition of Dynamite we've ever had. We've had these 3-hour blocks, but that includes a Rampage at the end of it. So I would think for the longest running Dynamite, have we ever had like a long Dynamite
this like
beyond this?
An 11-minute overrun. So
more than that. This almost went quarter past. This was a lengthier this was a real overrun as opposed to the minor ones Tony Schiavone warns us about.
Yeah, this could have been the longest overrun they've ever had.
Let me ask you this. Tony Schiavone is always there to warn us that, hey, we have an overrun. If you're watching this live, like 10 o'clock hits, you're like, I'm done. Like, if they didn't tell you there was an overrun, are you tuning out if the match isn't over?
I think it's more in case you were concerned that the match won't have enough time to end. That's why he warned you.
Well, I mean, you're gonna figure that out, wouldn't you? We're still going here. Like, do you have a drop dead time if you're watching this live that you can only?
I think it's worth promoting. It feels special, I guess.
They do it every week.
Maybe you have to set your PVR. That's a good warning, actually, because a lot of people probably forget to extend their PVRs.
Well, that's great for next week, but if I'm watching this tomorrow morning and they're telling me there's an overrun and I didn't set it for the overrun, that's not going to help me.
You're right. They should just never mention it, I think.
No, I'm just wondering what is somebody going to stop watching? But I guess it's good to get people in the habit of that. You should always record after the fact.
It's good to promote that you have special treatment from the network. Yes.
Okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, I'm doing all right. This was a very dense edition of Dynamite, a lot to cover. So I'm definitely I don't know if like a high is what I would call it, but it's almost more of like a sort of like a rush and stress that I always feel. Yeah, sure. From covering these sort of shows because there's just so much,
This was like an old Dynamite where there were a lot of notes. There's a lot of rewinding that had to be done. A lot of things happening on this show. I'm mentally out of breath, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does make total sense. Yeah.
Oh, not even from Dynamite. Like today was we have it is now school break. So we have 2 kids at home. These 2, their mission this summer is to kill me. That is what they have conspired to do, and they came so close today. I don't know how I'm going to survive.
What a headache.
Summer.
Yeah, I don't even think about that. You're used to at least a year with one of your kids fully in school. And
when they are together, they just bring out the best and worst of one another. And when they do that, it's a very high volume. There are tears, there are screams, there are just everything. And today, I just feel like I was put through the ringer. That's what I feel like at this hour as we are here to talk about Dynamite. I felt like Daniel Garcia by the end of today. That was my work day.
Yeah. I guess that's why we have summer camps and, maybe daycare or something, which you might hopefully consider.
No daycare. It is
Oh, you're the daycare. You're daddy daycare.
Maybe I'll sign up for daycare. I'll go there. Can I just give me a corner or something?
Yeah.
Well, we have lots to discuss. We have a very busy, packed number of days coming up as WWE is descending on Toronto. We are going to be kicking off our week of shows and events with Rewind Away on Friday. What better way to get people in the spirit of Money in the Bank weekend than going back to April of 1993, where the one-eyed Hulk Hogan in the big return to the World Wrestling Federation becomes the champion out of nowhere. Spoiler alert, as Bret Hart walks in and Hulk Hogan walks out as champion. We are also going to review a classic. The Undertaker goes 3-0 at WrestleMania, a match that had legendary proportions, literally and figuratively, with Giant Gonzalez. And what are we going to have on this show? We are going to hear, I've got the book excerpts ready. We're going to hear from Hulk Hogan. We're going to hear from Shawn Michaels. But most importantly, we're going to go to the book of Brett.
Ooh, lovely.
Guess what? Brett does not hold back on his thoughts about this turn of events and what happened in the aftermath with Terry.
You don't say. Yeah.
Guess what? He wasn't too happy with what came out of this. Okay, so we're going to hear all of that coming up on Rewind Away later this week as we transfer back 31 years to April of 1993. The event I have learned was Wei Ting's first pay-per-view event.
First WrestleMania. I don't know if this was exactly my first pay-per-view, but yeah, first WrestleMania 9. This was like a very nostalgic era for me. It was when I was first discovering professional wrestling. So every single one of these matches, I think to me had some level of meaning. So I look forward to talking about the main event, of course. Looking forward to talking about Crush versus Doink the Clown. Shawn Michaels versus Tatanka, of course. And who could forget? Razor Ramon versus Bob Backlund.
The matchmaking on this show is just something else.
Yeah.
Bob
Mania
Backlund
moment. A mania moment if there ever was one.
Oh, there truly was. It's the debut of Jim Ross. It is Caesar's Palace.
I'll be in my toga. I don't know about you, John.
No, not a chance. I might I don't know. Well, that's for the video subscribers to tune in and find out what the apparel is for this review. But that's coming out on Friday. We will also mention that Rich Fan and WH Park, they're going to have their continued rewatch of the X-Men films. This week up is Logan from 2017.
They are recording as we speak.
Are they? Okay.
Oh, well, yeah. We could even eavesdrop in the other room, but I'll
put my cup up against the wall, see what they have to say about Hugh Jackman's performance. I did not realize how many times Hugh Jackman played Wolverine. I had no idea it was this many films that he's in all of these.
The franchise was pretty much entirely reliant on him, and even if when they weren't, they realized adding him in was going to boost, an extra X amount of sales. Yes.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah.
Then we go into the weekend. So Rewind to SmackDown as normal on Friday night. We will be here after the show from Toronto. Neither of us are going to that card. I made the mistake the other night. GCW in Toronto is Friday night, not Thursday night at the Opera House. So they are going that same night on Triller. Then Saturday, we are going to be doing our special live event at Wide Open beginning at 2 p.m., 139A Spadina Avenue at Spadina and Richmond, downtown Toronto. It is a free event, so just show up, and we are going to be hanging out there. Earlier, we're going to be recording our wrestling media panel, and then we will be distributing it for everybody in the days and weeks to come. Date to be determined. This is not going to be like the WrestleMania documentary. It will be out in a timely fashion unless Wei Ting demands to take a look at the final edit and how we all come off. He has been known to want to make sure I come off a certain way.
Oh, of course, yes. Mm-hmm.
So we hope to see many of you there. We'll be doing the wrestling panel with Stephanie Chase, Benno, Brandon Thurston, Wei, and myself, and hanging out with all of you. The Poison Rana crew will be there. Many listeners are going to be popping in, so hope to see many of you there. And then for Money in the Bank itself, what we're going to be doing is, since I will be going to the press conference afterward, we're going to be doing the show Sunday morning. So look out for that Sunday morning. Wei and I will have a review of the show. And then late Sunday night, Braden and Davey will have a review of Heatwave. They're going to the event, and then they're racing back to their place to do a show. So they're very close to the arena, so it shouldn't be too much longer after Heatwave. But that is all of your coverage. Your one-stop shop is postwrestling.com.
Yeah, and just a note, no Collision course this weekend because Cena will actually be in town. So enjoy the week off from your AEW Collision coverage. I'm sure Kate and Cena will be back next week to talk about everything they missed.
That's going to be a tough episode for Collision. This is the first one in a while that they're going directly head-to-head. I mean, we have had the day of shows, but I mean, is this the first since WrestleMania that there's been a nighttime WWE event? Because we had Backlash in France, we had Saudi Arabia, and then we had Scotland. So this is their first head-to-head with Collision. That's, we will see. We will see how much Collision does. I think
It's
it's
going
going
to be a
to
tough
be.
one, but they are leading into it incredibly strong after tonight's Dynamite.
They have a big angle to follow up with, and they made it very clear they'll be following up with it in the very first segment on Collision, but more of that to come. Okay.
Last thing, while we're on our plugs, Dickie Bird will kill me if I don't mention one more time the summer sale currently going on at chop-tees.com. It's a site-wide sale, so whether you want to get your post-wrestling merch, your Poison Ronda merch, your WrestleNomics merch, your Laps fan merch, which is now up at Chop Tees, up to 25% off of classic tees, women's tees, ringer tees, baseball tees, snapback hats, flex fit hats, and trucker caps. John, did you get your Empress Classic tee yet, John?
I'm waiting.
Okay, how about your What Up Though Liberty's Ghost Line tee?
I've got one for every day that ends with a Y.
Okay, what about your Deathmatch Van Gogh Classic tee? You got that?
My Deathmatch Van Gogh tee. That is one that still has to be added to my cart.
Well, I know you have your post wrestling snapback. You wear it every single day when you're not on air. But all of that is on sale right now, chop-tees.com. Until Sunday.
Until Sunday. So make your way over there and support Chop-Tees. Also, I threw up the whole schedule for the Post Wrestling Cafe this month. It is a rather loaded month with the start of the G1 coverage, where we will be beginning the weekend of July 20th and 21st. That's when your first show will drop with Bruce Lord and Karen Peterson. And then Way and I are up later that week, but we are going to have many G1 shows this month. And as mentioned, the WrestleMania 9 review will be followed by a review of WWF Invasion 2001.
And a WrestleMania 40 behind the curtain documentary discussion sometime next week, I'm thinking, John.
Yeah, definitely going to push it to next week. Did you see any of it tonight? I've seen nothing.
No, nothing yet. No.
Okay, well, that's something we will get around to post Money in the Bank. So check out all of that. Couple of news items. We will keep them brief and then get to Dynamite. New Japan held continued its Seoul tour today, and this featured the semifinals in the G1 qualifiers. And I would say the outcomes were pretty newsworthy. I did get to watch the 4 matches today, and the tournament portion began with the B blocks, Hiroshi Tanahashi and Oleg Boltin, and this was a 7-minute match. And I'm not going to say this was the greatest match in the world, but man, did the crowd get into the end here because of the significance of this. Tanahashi goes for the aces high. Oleg Boltin catches him in midair, and then Boltin kind of hits his own version of a cradle shock, and the intensity really picks up here. And, Boltin is hardly a finished project, but he has made, to me, tremendous improvements. And Tanahashi goes and is hit with rolling senton, the kamikaze of Oleg Boltin's, and then he hits a second one, pinning Tanahashi in 6 minutes and 50 seconds. So Tanahashi is out of the G1 this year as Oleg Boltin advances. And his opponent is going to be Taichi, who went 19 and a half minutes with TJP. This was another tremendous match that you would expect these two to have, with Taichi winning with the Black Mephisto. And I'm thinking that Oleg Boltin is going to be the big, this to me feels like they are going full-fledged youth movement for this G1. The fact that Tanahashi is not in this, I would say Taichi is going to fall into that same role too. They are going with the younger talent and making a statement here. Then on the A block, it was Kenta and Callum Newman, a lot of fighting on the floor. The GTS gets blocked and Kenta is annihilating him with slaps. A lot of great selling from Newman, who then lands a flying knee, boot in the corner, and then into a springboard double stomp. And it's Callum Newman with the move that was handed down to him. He uses the Os Cutter to beat Kenta in 15 minutes and 40 seconds. So he is advancing in the A block side. And the final match of the night was Tomohiro Ishii and Yoshihashi. And we get a Ishii missing with the sliding D, hits a follow-up, and then goes for the vertical drop brainbuster. It's countered by a Yoshihashi DDT. He hits a destroyer for a near fall. Ishii comes back with a dragon suplex. It's just Ishii and Yoshihashi having this tour de force, and it's a crucifix bomb by Yoshihashi, followed by Karma to win in 26 minutes and 2 seconds. I was very surprised that Yoshihashi won this one. I thought at the very least you would get Ishii going to the final if you were going to have him lose, but it will be Yoshihashi against Callum Newman and Oleg Boltin against Taichi on Friday to determine the final 2 participants. What was your level of surprise from these results?
I'm mainly surprised because Ishii is not a part of this year's G1. I really do feel like he is such a guaranteed, I guess, um, uh, consistent
He's been the
deliverer
MVP like
of
almost year in,
quality.
year out.
Yeah, that I didn't think that they would actually take him out of the tournament, even though he was a part of this qualifying round. But yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. But as a way to, like, let's say it is Callum Newman or Oleg Bolton or the both of them entering this. I think this sort of
I could see it being
pre-qualifier.
both way. I could see it being both. Like,
Oh, over Yoshihashi and Taichi, absolutely.
yeah.
But as a way to introduce these two into the G1 fold to make them feel relevant by giving them strong wins over a Tanahashi and an Ishii, I think it's a wonderful way of getting them there. So I mean they could have just announced these names into the tournament, but they're making a much bigger deal out of their entry into the G1 this way.
If I had to nitpick, and believe me, this is it's a ballsy move by New Japan to do this, because it's almost like they are stating that this tour will be impacted by not having, especially Tanahashi, in the tournament proper itself. Like, you still may get him in the undercard matches, but they are making a statement about, we are building for tomorrow, and maybe it's one step back, but it's with the intent of 3 steps forward, with creating like the idea these are the stars to be focusing on. If I could have a nitpick, it would have maybe been that you get to Tanahashi and Ishii losing the final on Friday. And because you're not going to have any bigger upsets than what you had today with Tanahashi and Ishii losing. But
And I just want
nonetheless,
to correct myself. Yoshihashi defeated Ishii, so it wasn't one of the new guys beating Ishii. Maybe that would have been a bigger win in a second round, for instance, for one of the younger guys.
Yeah, I think Bolton is in. That would be my thought. And I'm thinking they're going with Callum Newman as like the kind of descendant of Will Ospreay. And again, like I like to see when companies take risk with their booking, and they're making a very loud statement with these outcomes. So very interesting, and that sets up Friday's finals, where we will get the final 2 participants. Shawn Michaels did a media call today. There wasn't a ton coming out of this, but he did talk about the crossovers they're doing with TNA, also mentioning AJ going to Noah and the blood sport involvement. But really didn't have much to add beyond the fact that, these doors are open and we're looking forward to it. He did not seem like super high on the idea of NXT going on the road when they moved to the CW network. He basically stated that it was like they're very happy in Orlando, and it would be a big undertaking for them to do that. And I don't know if you would find success of this as certainly they're going to do a huge number on Sunday. They're over 9,000 and they've got days to go. But as a weekly, even if you were taping, and I don't think they want to be bulk taping and then going on the road every other week. I just think it's a lot. And would the return be worth the added expenses of going on the road when you've got this building you own, and they've seen this surge in television viewership over the last 12 to 18 months.
Just the logistical hassle of, transporting your crews, which would probably be the same crews that would be traveling for a Raw and a SmackDown, with that one extra day, and flying talents and all that. That's just probably a headache they don't really want to deal with for what might be a little bit of a gain in interest.
So he was also stating that if they went back to the Apex, he seemed fine about it, and stated we would look at ways to improve it next time. Not disregarding the last one, but I think they realized that they're left a lot to be desired with the production of that show at the Apex, and I can certainly see them following up and making that a tour stop 1 or 2 times a year.
Sure, why not? Yeah. I guess I still at this point ask why, when it looks so similar to the Performance Center, or at least it can improve to look maybe as good as the Performance Center. What exactly is the point? But they must have another motive for wanting to have another PC on a different coast.
It's also a question of, especially when you have these Saturday night WWE shows, is that a better placement of these NXT shows, is rather than having their own weekend in its own market to draw, piggybacking off of a show. They're they're at over 9,200 tickets out. They could hit 10,000 in Toronto. WWE is probably going to top 40,000 tickets for these 3 nights.
Amazing.
And whatever Sami Zayn draws at the Danforth musical. I guess Toronto is not getting the Undertaker Dead Man show.
No.
Did very well in Philadelphia.
Well, I mean, I'm personally a bit more interested in a Sami Zayn comedy show at this point, and I think Johnny Knoxville might be flying into town for that.
They're
so.
teasing that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, those were some of the notes coming out of the NXT call. I did ask him about the exits of Drew Gulak and Gable Steveson. He didn't go too much in depth into them or anything regarding Drew Gulak, but I did ask, like, was there a disciplinary element that went into this decision? And his kind of stock answer was just like, we look at people and are they going to go to the main roster? And in not so many words, pretty much stated that Drew Gulak was not. And with Gable Steveson, put him over great as an athlete, but obviously, like, this was a several-year project, and they went into they came to that decision that they figured it was long enough. And he did make a point in there were some very interesting questions that were thrown at him, but another would be like, we don't want, someone that's all of a sudden like 35 years old here in NXT and is just, like just someone that's clearly not going to be making it to the next level. Like, they are going to be identifying who are our stars, and when we send them to the main roster, we don't want them to just exist on the main roster. We want them to be able to thrive on the main roster. And that's why when he was asked, the example was Lola Vice, and stating that, yeah, she has a lot of tools, but we want people to be finished products when they go to the main roster. It's not the goal of just get them out of here and they find a spot on the main roster. I don't think they look at that as succeeding in what the goal of this entire NXT project is supposed to be. And then just quickly on some ratings notes, we had a Raw on Monday, which was only up 4%, but was high enough that it was their best number since the night after WrestleMania back in April. They did a 0.62 in the demo. Canada was also much higher, several week high for them at 244,000 viewers. NXT on Tuesday fell 11%. This was their lowest number since the 4th of July last year at 542,000 and a 0.15 in the demo, a 17% drop, lowest since April 30th, which meant a big increase in Canada. Their first time cracking 100,000 viewers since April. So we are back to the norm where Canada and the US different. We were almost getting 2 in sync. So glad to see that we are back to normal when it comes to these patterns. And SmackDown on Friday. These are the matches they've announced so far for Friday. A-Town Down Under against DIY for the tag titles. Can you see a title switch on Friday in Toronto?
Not yet. No.
Belair and Jade Cargill against Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell, and Pretty Deadly against the Street Profits. So 3 tag matches announced, and probably all your key players that are on the show for one final angle, and whatever the follow-up is to the Bloodline angle last week.
Yeah. I think a lot of interest in that, and seeing this Jacob Fatu. Is he?
Do you think they're going to make it clear who the 3 are, or do you feel we're going to go into Saturday and you don't know which 3 of the 4 Bloodline members are in this match? Because they are very purposely putting the 4 names there, listing it as a 6-man tag.
I predict they will make it clear, because I don't know if it's that much of a sort of like mystery that is enticing so many people, but they could use it for storyline, of course. Yeah. And I'm assuming every member can get across the border. There are no issues there. Like I guess there at least there was some discussion of like border, that might have just been storyline, but with Tonga Loa, border issues preventing him from going to
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't
probably
know
not the case with Canada, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Wade, there are like a lot of talents that are coming up to Canada, and they're going to be bringing their they're going to be bringing their laptops, they're going to be bringing their entertainment devices, and maybe they're going to be thrown off. Maybe they're not going to be able to get all of their shows back in the States. So I'm hoping, for the sake of all these talents, that they know about the miracle that is NordVPN.
Here at Post, we love using NordVPN to help us unlock cheaper prices for pay-per-views and access geo-block services like AEW+. I also personally use it every time I'm out working on my laptop and using public Wi-Fi. It's an extra level of protection I like to have to make sure my data isn't being sniffed from malicious users on the same network. If you have any concerns about browsing speeds, NordVPN happens to be CNET's fastest VPN of 2024, clocking an average speed loss of just 11.1% compared to Surfshark's 17% and ExpressVPN's 24.8%. It costs less than $3 a month when you sign up through nordvpn.com/postwrestling, where Nord has offered our listeners 4 bonus months on top of all 2-year plans. And just for this campaign, all 2-year plans come with up to 20 gigabytes of travel data through Saley, a global eSIM service you can use in over 150 countries. Again, nordvpn.com/postwrestling, 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not happy. Get your bonus months, get your free Saley data voucher, and let Nord know you found them through us.
Damn.
You know Jacob Fatu is using his free Saley data voucher when he's up here in Canada.
Man, you really had it out. Malicious users out there. Well, beware. Don't get on Waze Wi-Fi.
You better stay away. I'm suspicious of any of you. Next time I'm out in a cafe working.
You can just see Way being that guy that like goes by your table and sees what VPN you're using. Surfshark.
Did you see that little graphic? You know, that little mysterious man right behind me using his Wi-Fi?
Just like some villain out of Inspector Gadget.
Yeah,
the malicious
right.
Users.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, there you go. nordvpn.com/postwrestling. Tell them Way and John sent you.
You've been really great with keeping these remembering them. By the way,
I was doing off-season training. I work it into my everyday discussions and conversations. I work in NordVPN ads. People don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm practicing.
It's paying off whatever you're doing.
Well, did Beach Break pay off for AEW? That was the question tonight. The Wintrust Arena in Chicago, hitting just about 5,000 tickets out, according to WrestleTix. So they did get some movement in tickets. This is not the peak with CM Punk or the higher numbers that they have done in Chicago, but a respectable number. When they're doing 5,000 for an AEW show at this stage, that was a good number. And we got a pretty good crowd, I thought, on Wednesday night.
I think a really good crowd. This felt like, almost like a classic Chicago crowd where they were very reactive, but they also got a really good show and a lot to cheer for. Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know how this crowd will be in that first match on Rampage after the show closing angle. I mean, that's a tough spot to be in on this show.
Sure.
But we started things off with Renee opening the show in the back with Daniel Garcia and Matt Menard. And Garcia calls this the most important night of his career. And that was probably true by the end of this. I mean, this was probably the biggest night of Daniel Garcia's career in terms of a major angle. And he respects Will Ospreay, but he has made a promise on his mother's life that he isn't losing. I was like, oh no, this is the new thing in wrestling. You make the promise you cannot keep. And we would see. MJF walks in and he offers to be in Daniel Garcia's corner. Garcia accepts, and Matt Menard, he's like the father that's, you've asked for my child's hand in marriage. And Matt Menard says, I approve. After all you've done for Daniel Garcia. I was like, what has he done for him? He offered him a match at Wembley last week, which was nice. But I'd be a little suspicious. After all you've done.
I mean, that's still more than a lot of other main eventers have done. Yeah. Well, we also don't know what he's done for him outside of what we see on TV, right? Maybe he bought him lunch.
Maybe. Okay. Yeah. What we are learning is Matt Menard doesn't take a whole lot to sway the man.
Well, yeah.
Opening things up with Bryan Danielson and PAC in the semifinal of the Owen Hart Cup. Both finals, the men's and women's, will be next Wednesday in Calgary. And Danielson, his spine and neck are being held together by tape. And we get a double cross body. Both men go down. Danielson is like, he's like trying to get feeling going back in his hand. No one sells nerve damage, quite like Tomohiro Ishii and Bryan Danielson. PAC hits a top rope Asai moonsault and then rolls into the ring into a brutalizer, which is applied. Danielson makes it to the rope, and Danielson, he absorbs these kicks as PAC is doing the yes signal to the audience, and Danielson lands on his feet from a German, and now he attacks with all these kicks, flying knee to the floor. PAC comes back and hits a tombstone for a 2 count, is caught in the label lock. He makes it to the rope, and Danielson climbs to the top, is knocked off balance, hit with the superplex, and then after PAC misses the black arrow, Danielson lands the Busaiku knee, but he is delayed in getting on top of PAC for the cover, and when he does, PAC reapplies the brutalizer. Danielson scrambles out of this into the label lock, PAC reverses, and then it's Danielson catching him with a crucifix at 16 minutes and 44 seconds as Doc Samson is into the ring to check on Bryan Danielson and whether this man has feeling in his extremities. Great match between these two. Did not disappoint. Quite the couple of nights here for Bryan Danielson between Shingo Takagi and PAC, and he'll be in the final next Wednesday.
I love the finish to this match. It was a great chess match at the end with each of them reversing the other's pin into a submission and then back into a pin and then back into a submission again and then finally resulting in a pin. Very technically strong match that, did some narrative heavy lifting as well with I guess reintroducing this neck injury for Bryan Danielson heading into these finals, presumably giving him an out or at least a way for the heel in the match to garner that much more I guess heat. I like this match a lot, but there was really never any doubt about the finish. And not to say you need to have that suspension of disbelief for every single match, especially what is this, a semifinal? But I do think PAC is great. He's a very dependable person they have on this roster. Just the matchup graphic alone, I think it was enough to elicit holy shit chants from this audience. But it's really hard to get, for me, emotionally invested in PAC matches because he never really has anything he's fighting for. He did in this match. The fact that he never got onto Wembley and he's trying to, but I don't think they made a big enough deal of that for me to buy that he actually had any single chance of winning. Whereas Danielson, he cut a promo saying that this is his last year, and in general just seems to have a bigger presence as a character than PAC has. So I just want them to eventually give me something that I can latch onto storyline wise for PAC where I can get that much more emotionally invested in these sort of matches.
Renee interviewed Willow Nightingale and says, "What are you thinking tonight for your match with Kris Statlander?" And her mantra is, "Nothing matters. Smile anyway." It's not my mantra. I'm not as
You smile a lot.
I don't like that. I should smile more. She mentions a good friend of hers that is battling depression and says that she smiles anyway. She smiles for that little girl that wanted to become a wrestler, who lost her TBS title and now has an opportunity to kick down the door, becoming a 2-time Owen Cup champion and go to Wembley. She's going to kick Kris Statlander's butt because nothing matters. Smile anyway. If there's one person on this entire roster that I never want to hear use the word bitch, it's Willow Nightingale.
Yeah, she doesn't really need to. I guess unless you have a special occasion where you need to get serious. I thought this might have been my favorite Willow promo that I've heard. This almost felt like a manifesto for her character, where we know she's the girl who smiles a lot, but we never really got a reason why she does that until now. She explains this is her defense mechanism for all the terribleness in the world, and it just kind of, to me, added an extra layer of depth to the character beyond just this really happy person we see all the time. And she ended it with an incredibly fierce rally cry. And that's a level of, I think, promo that I personally haven't seen from Willow before. I'm very encouraged by this TBS championship run for her, because she's showing that she is evolving and she's maintaining a level of sort of consistency, and I would even say improvement, even without the championship. So it bodes really well for the next time she actually does win a championship, because she's improving even without it.
The promo work has been really noticeable with her throughout this year. I think that's been a big evolution of her game. There were some highlights of the ladder match from Forbidden Door and Jack Perry proclaiming he is the future and he isn't going anywhere. So Mark Briscoe comes out and states he represents the greatest tag team, the Briscoes, which got a Dem Boys chant. He says, "They call me chicken, but don't get it twisted. I ain't scared of shit. So Jack Perry, you got lucky, but that was last week. This is a new week. It's Shark Week. And when I think of sharks, I think of blood. And when I think of blood, I think of blood and guts. It's like, this guy should be doing our Nord ads. And he declares himself the first member of Team AEW in Blood and Guts coming up in 3 weeks.
Let's put this into perspective, okay? This man was at one point not allowed to be on TBS or TNT. Now he's on the channel promoting Shark Week.
Man.
And he's getting to be one of a very limited number of members representing AEW in this very one of their biggest matches of the entire year. So the fact that they're giving him this sort of spotlight, this sort of consistent mic time on Dynamite, obviously tells you that they are committing to pushing him and trying to elevate him into a bigger star. And all they have to do is give him mic time. The man is doing it himself. He's delivering, and he's just like been so entertaining every single time.
So he makes the announcement that he's on Team AEW, and Jack Perry drills him from behind when he appears with the TNT belt. Kyle O'Reilly comes down to help, and Okada shows up, hits Kyle with the Rainmaker. The Young Bucks are out. They hit at the EVP trigger onto Briscoe, and the four men pose with their belts when the Acclaimed and 60-year-old Daddy Ass run down, and they do remind us it is 5-on-5, so the Elite need a fifth man, and we've got, in theory, they said they are only promoting Mark Briscoe as the member of Team AEW, but this kind of felt like the whole setup for Blood and Guts by the end of this.
It did. I mean, when you figure, okay, like there's Mark Briscoe, Kyle O'Reilly came out because they're faction mates at this point in the conglomeration, and then the Elite, that's already 4. You'd figure, who else is it? Orange Cassidy, but that doesn't feel like a big enough team for.
You don't see Daddy Ass being one of the 5?
No, I do not. So I really do think this tells us that only Mark Briscoe is in that spot. I don't even see Kyle O'Reilly or the Acclaimed. Maybe the Acclaimed, but I don't think Kyle O'Reilly.
I don't know. I kind of left this as like it'll be O'Reilly, the Acclaimed, and one more.
But it just doesn't feel big enough to me. Like
it's what the program is, though. Like,
so who has been flying the flag of Team AEW up until this point, storyline wise? Like, can we expect Swerve to be on this team?
Yes, that's possible.
Especially if Paige is on the other side, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The Acclaimed, I guess, maybe because they've been opposing the Bucks. But beyond that,
and they've got that tag title match still to come as well.
Mm-hmm. But I just don't know if Kyle is big enough. I don't even know if I don't. They're not even hinting at Orange Cassidy being in it right now.
Yeah, Cassidy is he was MIA on this show. Tony Storm, Mariah May, and Luther are in the back, and Mariah May will face Hikaru Shida on Rampage in the semifinals, and Storm warns her that Shida is dangerous, but Storm will be in her corner on Rampage, and she will have Mina Shirakawa via satellite. So that's very kind of her. Not the easiest time zone to be able to coordinate.
Maybe she'll zoom in or Skype in through picture-in-picture.
She says that May will digest thunder and defecate lightning, which is not exactly how Road Warrior Hawk used to put it. And Storm Renee goes to ask her about what if she wins, but before Storm just cuts her off from this hypothetical that these two could end up squaring off with each other if Mariah May is victorious in this tournament, which is clearly where you are led to believe. But I think the idea of a Mariah May Willow Nightingale final is the most compelling option for people. And
No, yeah, they've built up strong storylines for the both of the would-be finalists. Yeah, I don't think it'll be Hikaru Shida, unfortunately, Shida fans. But yeah, I think they've done such a great job with this entire story so far, and we're moving on to the next chapter beyond Mina Shirakawa. Tony Storm in these segments, I continue to be amazed at how fully realized of a character timeless Tony Storm is. Let's remember, this character isn't even a year old. And you see her deliver these this sort of dialogue, and you would think she's been doing this for a decade, but it's still very new. And I think going into Wembley, she's going to receive a big reaction.
Kris Statlander and Willow Nightingale in the semifinal of the Owen Hart Cup. They start on the ramp, and there's a pounce that sends Kris flying down the ramp. Statlander drops her with a head kick and then tries for a German off the apron, but Willow elbows her, dropping her to the floor and lands the cannonball. She tries for the Babe with the powerbomb, but Kris hits a released German. Willow then lands her own German off the second turnbuckle, and this really gets the crowd going. There's multiple counters. Stokely Hathaway places a chain in the corner, distracting the ref. So Kris grabs the chain with Rick Knox. His back is turned, and Willow moves out of the way. So Statlander nearly runs into Hathaway and pulls up, and then Willow rolls up Statlander in 8 minutes and 10 seconds. I thought this match was going well. I thought the ending was a little bit of a down note in terms of the finish.
Yeah, this wasn't like the feud ending type of match that I think these two will have eventually. This was, just I think a way to get one of the participants through to the final, in order to eventually maybe have the other cost them the final, so that we can get to a further real match on a pay-per-view, for instance, between the two. So I think in that sense, the sort of somewhat dissatisfying finish was fine. But I think you have to be very encouraged by the type of reaction that these two garnered from the get-go of this match. They maintained a very loud, very sustained reaction throughout its entirety. And that tells me that these two and AEW have done a great job with their story and their rivalry. It really wasn't that long ago when the non-title women's match on the program, or at least the match without title implications, would more so feel like an obligation than something that I think had a place on a show, and it'd be met with silence. But these two have shown that you don't need a title in order to tell a compelling story for the women in AEW, and it's shown me that at least now that AEW can make time for women's stories even without a title involved. So match was good. These two have great chemistry. They're hard hitting. They're cool moves. They're engaging, and I expect Statlander to cost Willow the match in order to lead to another rematch.
Renee is with Team Jarrett in the back, and she asks how Jeff is able to prepare for this match tonight, not even knowing the opponent, and Jeff just turns and walks away. So Jay Lethal is left to state that he has never been more prepared, and this is about more than wrestling. It's about honoring one of his best friends, Owen Hart. So the whole Jarrett, there was no comedy tonight. They were the full-on baby faces going into tonight's match. Tony Schiavone inside of the ring welcomes back Britt Baker. She comes in, gives Tony a big hug, and then is handed the microphone. And she goes to explain that we all have a past, present, and future. The past is a lesson, the present is a gift, and the future is motivation. And she states for the last 10 months, she was injured and mentioned having several herniated discs and a torn hip labrum, but told herself she was fine. And she started feeling sick last year. The room was spinning, her vision was blurred, and started to develop tingling in her right arm, but told herself she was fine. She was not even able to open a bottle of water, and her right side stopped working, and she was hospitalized for a week with something called TIA, transient ischemic attack. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. There's a reason that they have used TIA to identify it. And explains that it's when the brain is not getting enough blood and is referred to as a mini stroke, and realized this was not good. And she told Tony Khan that she needed to go get better, and Tony told her to take as much time as she needed. And you could tell the crowd almost seemed like they were just not expecting this level of information. This has obviously been kept extremely quiet, and I think most people just assumed that this was a long-term injury that she was dealing with and coming back from. I hate to call it a standard injury, but not something so significant like this. And you had just a hushed tone from this crowd as they were listening to this, and you could see this was a very difficult speech for Britt Baker, I think, to probably convey her thoughts. She started it as much just stating she's just gonna talk about what exactly she went through.
I can't imagine how scary going through something like this is. I also can't imagine how difficult it was for her personal life to be with her partner, who also is injured. I mean, Adam Cole, I mean, we don't know when I guess she was feeling these symptoms, but I imagine Cole's still very much recovering from his own injuries, probably needed some care himself. and instead having to try to manage this, between the two of them. I mean, I imagine it must have been an incredibly difficult time.
Yeah, and she fast forwards. She's now cleared and is healthy, but she had never been as nervous as she was this past Sunday because she was unsure of herself. She didn't know if anyone would care when she came back, and the fear of she had the fear of rejection. But everyone welcomed me back, and for the chance that you gave me, I will never forget that. And tells the people that when you're going through things, you need to be present and and experience them, because once you get through it, you're going to appreciate it that much more. And then kind of that was like the whole health side of things. And then she just transferred it to Mercedes Moné at this point, and just gets into full promo mode at this point, stating that there's a new face of the women's division, and makes fun of her for having to pipe in the chant CEO into her entrance music so that fans will chant it. But there's only 3 letters that matter in this company, and they are DMD, when Mercedes pulls up outside of the arena and makes her way inside. But like the first half of this, I mean, this was like a really like compelling speech that was just kind of out of nowhere.
It was. I thought it was incredible. Like, Britt's cut a lot of great promos, so I'm not going to say this is her best promo, but this, I think, was probably her most real and personal speech that she's ever given, maybe ever in her professional wrestling career. I think the vulnerability she showed was, I mean, it felt very genuine. I love the way she structured the promo, talking about the past to the present to the future, and just kind of like taking us through the narrative of what she went through, how she felt coming back, and the real sort of like fear of rejection that she was going through just on Sunday. It was a very great speech, the type of speech that felt bigger than just a professional wrestling promo, and almost more of like a personal, storytelling. So between this and the Willow promo, I mean, I thought the women on this show up until this point were killing it on the microphone so far.
So Mercedes arrives, and the Young Bucks are there to greet her and state that her championship celebration is ready, as we get the production team coming down to set up the celebration, which consisted of 2 photos and about a dozen or so balloons. This was the saddest looking celebration I have ever seen in pro wrestling. And you've got Baker in the middle, just standing among these gold balloons, as Mercedes comes down, makes her entrance, and the crowd is chanting DMD at her, booing Moné. And Baker says, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to upstage me just like I upstaged you at Forbidden Door. And Moné says she is a real star. The crowd is just on her. And Baker just cuts to the chase. She wants to challenge her at All In. I wrestled on the very first All In here in Chicago. I was the first female to be All In when I signed the contract. And I wrestled last year at All In at Wembley, while you were looking like a broken bitch with a broken leg in the stands. And Moné just looks at her and just puts up her hand and pie faces her right in the face and says, there is a long list of opponents, so you get to the back of the line, bitch. Baker responds, bitch, what line? It's like, we are on. It's like, man, we have got a program, Way. We are not, you try and top this, Max Caster, and says there's a price to pay when you mess with Mercedes Moné. And she holds up her belts and leaves. So earlier than I thought we were going to get this challenge, but clearly, like, this is where we assumed this was going, but they're making it very clear, almost 2 months away from this match, that they're going to spend the next 6-7 weeks building.
I mean, that is the next pay-per-view on the horizon. This was essentially the start of our build to All In as our next pay-per-view, right? So why bother wasting the time? I also wonder like how at this point like frequent Moné's in-person appearances are going to be. So with her, I think almost like the less the better. It keeps her sort of superstar status like that much I guess more apparent if she only makes infrequent appearances. And for that reason, I don't think it hurts at all to just like have one of these main events, be announced already this far in advance. I thought this was a very hot segment for what already feels like a very hot program. This has the potential to be AEW's biggest women's match that they've ever promoted. We have Mercedes Moné now, between coming out with the Elite's approval to just her general demeanor in this match. She's a confirmed heel, at least for this program, and it's suiting her so much better already. She seems so much more comfortable playing this CEO character. Just her manner of speaking, whether or not she's authentic doesn't matter anymore, because as a heel, it helps you to be inauthentic. So she, to me, like in this segment, finally feels like she's living up to the potential that I think we all expected when she signed with the company. She actually feels to me like a bigger star in this heel role than she did in already like the past 2-3 months. And Britt Baker, I mean, as a babyface like return goes, I don't think you could have expected better from her. Like, she already feels like the top babyface, maybe outside of like Toni Storm, in terms of star power on the women's division here.
We followed that with Renee, with Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher in the back, and Don Callis walks in. Will takes all the blame for his loss to Swerve, says it was my fault. I couldn't bring myself to use the Tiger Driver. I'm just not that guy anymore. I mean, he was setting up for it, and his conflict was Tiger Driver.
Was there hesitance, or was he stopped from using the move by somebody else?
I mean, he screamed it. It was like, if anything, it was like he was like showboating too long, and that allowed Swerve.
There seemed to be no hesitance at all as he called for it. So I don't know. I got to rewatch the match to see if that spot was
that was in many ways like the key spot of the whole match.
Yeah.
Was the Tiger Driver and being hesitant.
Like it feels like, and somebody in the chat is saying Swerve countered it rather than him actually stopping it himself.
He countered it, yeah, but it was not that. It was like he was.
So how
like,
does it fit this narrative? Like, did they screw up in the match?
Well, I mean, maybe that was his way of. That's his hesitation.
What he let? Oh, okay, so he let
yelling out.
He let Swerve counter it.
Okay. Or just took too long. Yeah, I think it could have been conveyed a bit more. Bit more simple than what was done. He said that he's indebted to Don Callis because he got him Kenny Omega last year. Then you got me Jericho at Wembley. I have a loyalty to you, but I want to be out of the Don Callis family. And Callis states, I'm not in the business of letting people out of written contracts, but I'm happy to do you that favor. And maybe one day I'll ask you for a favor. So planting something there. And he gives him a hug, and he certainly got the a certain look on his face that you were there to register. And then he leaves with Kyle Fletcher, who kind of goes begrudgingly. And that was it. That was our belief. I thought for sure that this was playing somewhere into the main event, but was not. So something for the future too.
It will, or like, at some point. Yeah, this was an interesting way to break them up. An exit that I think went not the way I expected. I think the expectation for a wrestling breakup or exit is that Ospreay would get turned on by the Callis family and he'd get beat down. But that almost kind of seems predictable and cliche. So I'm kind of interested to see where they go. They're using this very amicable exit as the start of further tension between Callis and Ospreay. So I'm very curious to see where they go from here.
Jericho comes out to join commentary so that he gets his TV time, and he cuts a promo that Hook, he committed the cardinal sin, stealing someone's finisher, and that doesn't work for me, brother. And he states that Taz was being biased by clapping like a mark and doesn't trust Taz, will not sit with him. So Matt and Nick have granted him an executive order to relieve Taz of his duties tonight, and security escorts Taz out of the arena.
Yeah, I thought this was good. It's a good way to gain heat, good way to keep Jericho and Taz apart on commentary, and thought it worked really well tonight.
So Jericho's on commentary for Samoa Joe, Hook, and Shibata against the Cage of Agony. We've got all three together for this one. I thought that Toa Leona was really the standout on the Cage of Agony side. He was involved in a lot here. Joe went for a tope suicida, but is stopped with a shoulder block from Toa. And then Cage goes for a F5 onto Hook, but it's countered into a DDT. Tags in Joe. Crowd, they were kind of down for the first half of this, but once Joe got this hot tag, the crowd certainly heated up for the end part of this. They take turns with Toa in the corner. Khan breaks up a cover, and then they end up it's a three-way submission series of counters by the baby faces, including Toa, who is the legal man caught in the coquina clutch, and he submits at 9 minutes and 8 seconds. And throughout the match, you have Jericho just stating the obvious and being like a terrible commentator.
Sure, yeah. What did you think of it? Did you like Jericho, this Learning Tree Jericho in commentary?
Not as much, no. It was a little much to have on commentary. I got what they were doing. Like, that's what I feel I say every week with the Jericho. I get what they're doing. And
right. Are you supposed to enjoy it? Are you supposed to think it's too much?
There's segments I have genuinely like found, like, I think there's times like he really does, like, it's entertaining. And I think he's trying very hard not to be entertaining.
So isn't it working then? At least according to... That's the thing. You could never criticize something like this, because whether or not you like it is there's a defense for it.
It's like I wrote my book report and I got a D on the book report, but I was trying to fail the class.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's like, yeah, but you did fail the class. So I don't care if that was your plan. You still failed the class.
Right.
Anyway, afterward, that's where the big angle takes place. Big Bill and Brian Keith attack with chairs, and Brian Keith removes the sling. He's been healed, and they place Shibata's arm through the chair and smash it with a chair. Then they're whipping Hook with the FTW title. Big Bill smashes a chair onto Joe, who's laid out on the steps, and then Keith brings out a knuckle duster for Jericho to blast Hook. Then they bring out a table, and Big Bill chokeslams Hook through that. It's like, man, they've almost killed this guy, and more to come. I mean, they were going to barely leave Hook with a pulse by the end of this show, but big beatdown here with Hook. And I mean, we might as well just do the follow-up. We go later in the show backstage where Hook is with the trainers and the Learning Tree attack him again and hit him with a fireball.
The fireball makes its return from the Wizard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think all of this was ultimately like very beneficial for the entire program, and especially the Learning Tree here. You know, like, it's well and good to, I guess, do this sort of like comedy, pseudo comedy type of silliness, but in order to be taken seriously as a faction, you need to deliver like devastating beatdowns. And I thought this like achieved that, you know, between the pillmanizing of Shibata's arm to everything they did with Hook. I mean, fireballs are kind of like they can sort of fit in the realm of like the fantastic and comedy, but I think it was used to a serious enough degree here. Selling from Hook was serious enough that it felt like a serious angle.
Then we go to Jeff Jarrett and the wild card in the semifinal of the Owen Hart Cup. The Jarrett team comes out and they're there with Jeff, and Jeff walks by himself as the rest go to the back, and he's awaiting his opponent. And then out comes the returning, with new theme music, Hangman Page. And he is out, and they bring up immediately the indefinite suspension that has obviously been lifted by the Young Bucks. And it's Page with a very aggressive demeanor out of the gate, and he is just going wild on Jeff Jarrett. He is kicking away at him, stomping on him, and they're asking, like, why is he being so aggressive? And then he takes him to the floor, and he hits Jeff Jarrett with the nastiest apron bomb, and this guy comes right down on his tailbone on the edge of the apron. This looked like it sucked. And he then has Jarrett's head bashed into the steps, DDTs him, and the crowd starts chanting, "Whose house?" And this greatly angers Hangman Page as he starts screaming at the fans. He's biting Jarrett, teases the Deadeye when Jarrett finally gets in a stroke on the edge of the apron. Both men land on the floor, and then it's Jarrett. He several times attempts a sharpshooter, hits the Owen Hart enziguri, and then the stroke is stopped. He counters a Deadeye, and then Jarrett goes for the sharpshooter again, and it's stopped. And finally, Page hits the Deadeye, but he doesn't go for the cover, so there's more swerve chance, and he's setting up for the buckshot lariat. Jarrett collapses, and then Jarrett sends him back to the apron, stops the buckshot, and takes out his legs to apply the sharpshooter. This got a huge reaction. But then Page reaches the rope, snaps Jarrett's throat on the rope, and he hits the buckshot, drills him with more punches, hits another Deadeye, and Hangman pins Jeff Jarrett in 11 minutes and 14 seconds. Karen is out to check on Jeff, and Hangman advances to face Jay White on Collision. So this was the end of the Jeff Jarrett story in the Owen Hart Cup.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I am curious to see where they go with Jarrett though, because I think that promo and his inclusion in this entire tournament has probably exceeded way more than they were expecting. So I think there's so much potential to, refresh a Jeff Jarrett character and to be able to tell an interesting story with this version of Jeff Jarrett, a sympathetic Jeff Jarrett, the most sympathetic I think Jeff Jarrett has ever been in his entire career. So I'm curious to see where they go with it. But the long-term thing here was the reintroduction of Hangman Page, and what a perfect reintroduction for a heel Hangman Page. I was curious to see like how they would get the crowd to react in a way that would create a negative reaction for Page, because anytime somebody a star of his caliber makes a return, the natural inclination is to cheer him. But they found a way by having Hangman be needlessly sadistic and violent on an old guy trying to win a tournament for his deceased friend. And if they had that foresight that Jarrett was gonna like garnered this sort of sympathy, that it's great matchmaking on Tony Khan's end, outstanding setup from Jeff Jarrett through that promo, of course, and great like possessed heel energy from Hangman here. So as an establisher for what feels like a more serious heel version of Page, I think this was great. This feels like a character that is suitable to headline a Wembley Stadium match.
Yeah, it wasn't the first thing I thought of, but at the end of the show, I did find it interesting that if ever you were going to get CM Punk chance, like this would have been it. It would have been Hangman, or it would have been the Young Bucks earlier. And that clearly feels like that's a thing of the past. If you can go to Chicago and there were no Punk chants, and I mean, that's something that it does feel now that it is more in the rear view. And if there were like 3 people on this show that you would have like had reserved for that, like imagine if this crowd just felt like instead of chanting for Swerve, they had just opted, well, it's Hangman and it's Chicago and that's an easy chant, and no one went for that.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that. I to be honest, the thought didn't even cross my mind, and maybe if I was in Chicago, I'd feel differently. But I think at this point, everybody's kind of, for the most part, moved on from all of that. Or like it's months past the breakup. Everybody's found new relationships, and everybody is happier for it. So
we're 2 months from airing security footage. I mean, it's not as though it was like we're talking.
Jack Perry, though, I think will be a different question. Like when Perry came out,
Jack Perry didn't get any of those chants either.
Yeah, sure.
And he did on that Chicago show for New Japan Strong. Well, that was right after the security footage.
Yeah. If Perry makes mention, like if he cut a promo tonight, I think he could have used it for heat. But I think for Page, Swerve is that much more on top of everybody's mind than CM Punk is for him.
So at the end of this, I mean, I guess this all, like, I saw like a lot of arguments that, Jeff Jarrett just did such a great job.
No.
I mean, you knew where, but if you're looking at this, yes, obviously for where you're going, this was the only outcome. Doing this with Hangman Page. You can certainly argue that for Jarrett, it was almost too great of a segment for a guy that was going to be out first in the first elimination. But I think it added a lot more drama to this match than had you not had that promo, or if this had just been random person against Hangman Page in this same role. And I think to your point, there is clearly something. I don't know what you can get out of this with Jeff Jarrett. I think 100% he needs to be on that show in Calgary in some big segment of some sort, whether it's maybe even a speech about how he let down Owen or something like that, like some really emotional something on that Calgary show next week. I think you have to have him on.
I think you use it to build to a next program for Jeff Jarrett against an up-and-coming heel. Against Bruce. What would Bruce have against Jeff Jarrett?
Bruce will come up with something.
Somebody else should come out and, maybe Jarrett comes out, delivers a speech, and gets beat up by, a new heel. I mean, there's so much incredible potential in this old man Jarrett character that is just become, I guess, a wonderful babyface. Just because he over-delivered, in his promo, doesn't mean you should throw away your plans for Wembley Stadium and all of a sudden make Jeff Jarrett, the person to win the tournament or even go to the finals. That makes no sense. Let's also remember, everybody, there's an Owen Cup next year, and if you could tell a long-term story of Jeff Jarrett finally, trying to enter.
I don't know if Jeff Jarrett and long-term are words you are putting together in 2025.
How many years has he been in AEW? This man will never retire. Look at the shape he's in.
If this was not attached to the Wembley shot, I think you could make a real compelling argument that this would have been the most compelling. I feel this was of, like, you talk about like PAC having no reason at all. Jeff Jarrett was the strongest story going into this. And for many people, yes, was this guy going to be putting together the matches of a PAC? Not a chance. But in terms of an emotion and story, no one touched Jeff Jarrett in terms of like what they made people feel. Like they went from, why is this guy in this tournament, to this guy is the one everyone's rooting for, from that 9-minute segment. And that connects with a lot of people that might not have the attachment to just a great wrestling tournament, that Jeff Jarrett was able to convey those emotions and get people really rooting for somebody.
Well, those emotions just aren't something you can fabricate and write for a wrestler. I mean, they are born from real tragedy. So again, like I think it was great matchmaking ahead of time in order to use that to give heat to Hangman Page in his heel return. But I mean, you could have only gone so far with the tournament that ended up with the winner headlining a Wembley Stadium match, right? But again, I think for next year's Owen, he should be a favorite. Maybe they should continue, this chase and tell a bigger story with him in this Owen Cup.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the way the brackets were. I mean, if you're looking at things, like I find this Hangman Jeff Jarrett match could have been perfect for Memphis if you had given Jeff, he gets the one win, in the tournament, and then you have Hangman just come back and he's just.
Which town? When is Memphis? When is the
Saturday? Memphis? Saturday is the semifinal with Hangman and Jay White.
That would have been perfect, really.
And then you have Hangman beat him, and it's like, it's got. I mean, you want to talk about a crowd, like, with all due respect, like, this was a good crowd tonight, but it wasn't like this crowd was just at the edge of their seat for Jeff Jarrett. And I don't know if you'd get that in Memphis either, but I think it would have been.
I think you absolutely.
Well, I'm saying, and I mean, they've got like 2,000 tickets for this Memphis show. I mean, they could use some local story with a Jeff Jarrett, and he's one win away from facing Bryan Danielson.
Yeah.
Hook. We got the Hook fireball angle, and then Renee catches up with Hangman and asks if that aggression was necessary. But the Bucks come in, they're celebrating, they've lifted the suspension and insinuate, you help us, we'll help you. Can you be our fifth man for Blood and Guts? And Hangman grabs Matt and says, I'm not your puppet. I don't need you anymore or any of your bullshit games. I'm here to win the Owen. And he just knocks Nick out of the way and he leaves. So partial heel Hangman Page.
Oh, no, he's total heel. Heels can hate other heels, especially if they're the type of serious heel that doesn't like the more comedic heels. Like,
who are you rooting for in this kind of a segment, though? What are you left with at the end of this?
So I dislike the both of them, and I dislike Page because, like, just because Page is somebody that I should dislike doesn't mean that he should just automatically befriend every single heel group, right? Villains should hate other villains as well if they have a storyline reason to. I'm gonna boo Page.
What are we so mad about Hangman for? Like, he came out and he won a wrestling match. He didn't break the rules.
Well, if you ask that question, you should ask, why are we cheering Swerve, the person who went into this man's house and threatened his baby? Why is he the good guy in all of this? And why is Page the bad guy? Like, if you want to ask those questions, sure. But we like Swerve. That's why we're cheering Swerve, and that's why we're booing Hangman.
Okay. Well, it's that simple then. So we remain one man short.
So
for
he
the
doesn't
elite.
he doesn't commit to joining Blood and Guts, at least at this point.
At least not right now. Mm-hmm. So you could somehow work Hangman into there. There's also like that lingering favor that they had asked of like Christian, like they did a few weeks ago with the elite. Although he kind of feels like he's off in his own thing with Jay White now.
I think Swerve joins Team AEW, and that entices Hangman to join the elite.
And that might be where you go. So Rampage on Friday, Roosh against Commander and Mariah May against Hikaru Shida. Collision, you have MJF on the show, Tony Storm against Trish Adora, and Hangman Page against Jay White in the semifinal. Next week, Swerve is on the show, and we get the 2 Owen finals from Calgary. Will Ospreay against Daniel Garcia for the international title with MJF in the corner of Daniel Garcia. Ospreay and Bryan Danielson, I think, used up all the all the kinesio tape backstage between the two of them.
In the country,
there was nothing left for anybody else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ospreay and MJF, they go face to face on the floor as Ospreay is in control, and Ospreay starts to work on the back, and Daniel Garcia just eats chops. He fires back at Will, screams in his face after eating a boot, and then hits Ospreay with a pair of neck breakers and a DDT working on the neck. Ospreay is taunting him, and at one point, sometimes we get guys that are just like, they give their chest to chop me, or even maybe your head to punch me. Ospreay leaned over, kick me in the head. Give me the Kawada kicks. It's like, who's volunteering that one?
A pretty crazy wrestler like Will Ospreay. Mm-hmm.
So instead of kicking him in the head, he starts doing his dance and is like hitting him with like his thigh.
Yeah, I don't think Kawada did this ever.
Maybe in Hustle.
Kawada did do the dance with on that variety show. So yeah,
Ospreay stacks him, and then with the kick out, turns it into a Styles clash for a 2 count. Hidden Blade gets caught into a rear naked choke. Then Garcia moves to a guillotine. Oscutter gets caught, and then Garcia hits a pile driver for a near fall. So it's like all his offense is built around the neck. MJF then slides the Dynamite diamond ring onto the apron for Daniel Garcia, and he takes the ring. They scramble. He's hit with a lariat, but then he hands the ring back to MJF. He can't bring himself to do it. Will was like, oh, he really conveyed conflict about whether to do something or not. Instead of like, Dynamite diamond ring. And with that, Garcia turns around and bam, he is hit by the Hidden Blade and loses at 14 minutes and 21 seconds. I really did like the ending of this. This was well done. And Ospreay comes over, and it's the reversal of what we saw on Sunday when it was Swerve kind of consoling Will Ospreay. This time it's Will talking to Daniel Garcia and giving him encouraging words. And Garcia is crying in the corner. And MJF is watching in the background. When Will leaves, he comes up to Daniel Garcia. He says, that was on me. That was not your fault. And he says, the people still love you, helps him up. They're cheering Daniel Garcia, and MJF hugs him and then nails Daniel Garcia, kicks him right in the balls, and he puts on his ring. Matt Menard runs down. Our great judge of character gets drilled in the face with a ring. And man, he spits on Daniel Garcia, blasts him with the ring, and Garcia is bleeding. We then cut to Matt Menard, who is leaking a faucet. I was like, man, I didn't know if we needed the extra. Matt Menard had like Niagara Falls coming down from his head. It kind of overshadowed Daniel Garcia because this man can bleed, as we have seen in the past.
You had the Canadian and the American side of the falls.
Oh my goodness, I couldn't have set that one up better. So then MJF channels the tombstone off the turnbuckle. I don't think he was watching The Undertaker circa 93. It looked to be watching some Chris Benoit from New Japan, and hits the tombstone off the second turnbuckle. The officials are out, and then in the greatest line for a heel turn, Christopher Daniels screams, "Why did you do that?" And MJF continues with punches. Ospreay is staggering down. He's still selling the effects of the match. Chases MJF away from the ring, and MJF leaves through the crowd. And the heat that this guy had, he's going right up to these fans who I'm pretty convinced were legit fans and just getting right into their face. One of them
shoved one.
He shoved one. Then he took a trash can and was like going to empty trash onto another. And dude, he gets right into this guy's face, and security is like not a safe distance away either. It was like, man, either side could have just like nailed the other. Like he was just going for it and then leaves.
Like the type of thing, if this was legitimate, that he definitely would have had a talking to. And I also think MJF would have been like worth it, you know?
Well,
it helped this angle significantly.
This dude was in the zone in this walk away. And Garcia is then stretchered out, and they're trying to calm down Ospreay, who is furious over this. Big angle to end the show. And I thought this was I thought it was executed really well. And I feel this is probably the direction you want to be in, is much like last week. the match you want to see is MJF and Will Ospreay, and not so much Daniel Garcia with MJF. You want to see that match, but the bigger match is Ospreay MJF, which feels like that is the match.
Yeah, I think we can tell at this point, and a lot of people suspected after last week that the MJF versus Garcia was just a bit of a misdirect, and the real program that they're building to was Ospreay versus MJF, and I thought that tonight seemed to confirm that. First of all, the match I think was a very good match, but man, it's been great for Daniel Garcia, and Daniel Garcia throughout this entire program has really been given a lot of spotlight. They've been actually making effort in elevating certain stars, and Garcia throughout this program has been one of them, and I would say tonight was successful. But this post-match beatdown was like at a length and I think at a level of like severity that I certainly wasn't expecting coming out of this. I think MJF, he came back to such a strong babyface reaction. They did the Hechicero match in Long Island. He got such an incredible reaction there. And I didn't think that they were going to turn him heel yet. And I thought eventually it would happen, but I didn't think it would be like this soon into his return. But when you think about it, I why delay it? Like he's going into Wembley, presumably facing Will Ospreay. He's going to be booed anyway. And as a heel, he just feels that much more complete, that much more serious, that much more of a main event level character. The babyface run was fun. It was nice, okay, like I had fun with Adam Cole, but I much prefer this this is MJF in his best form, isn't it? So what does this tell you about the Cole program?
I mean, my thought is like when they did that abrupt write-off of it, I felt like that is something they're in no rush to get back to for maybe multiple reasons, whether it's Cole's recovery time or just when they knew what direction they were going with. And when you look at the pecking order, like MJF as a babyface is kind of fighting for a spot with like Swerve, with Will Ospreay. They are very solid on that babyface side. And especially in the coming months, like Danielson is going to have a pretty prominent babyface spot.
Don't forget Jeff Jarrett, the biggest.
Jeff Jarrett's about to usurp them all. So, I mean, you're putting MJF into the role that I think deep down that is where fans want to see him. And I think that there is certainly, this guy can play a babyface, but the timing, like this just felt, when he made this turn, it just felt like this was the right role at the right time for him. And you have several big matches coming out of this, because I think this is going to be a major injury angle that Daniel Garcia has to come back from. And you've got the Ospreay match, which very well could be Wembley.
Yeah, I think it almost should be. And if they make that
seems
concrete,
obvious. Yeah.
I'm curious to know how that affects ticket sales.
Yeah, I mean, now is, they're at like that 41,000 mark, and now we're going to start to see the card come together, because by next week we are going to know what the two title matches are after the Owen Cup. So we are going to know kind of your top direction. Like this certainly seems like one, and then you have Britt Baker and Mercedes. So we are like
from the tournament. I think we could presume Toni Storm versus Mariah May. Willow is a possibility, but I'm thinking more May, because it's England and everything, and then you've got Hangman and Swerve.
That seems to be the way you would assume things go. So yeah, this was a lot of angles on this show, and by the end of it, like this did feel like one of those older Dynamites, where by the end of it, you're trying to process all that you saw, but the impactful one was certainly the closing angle.
Yeah, I would say there were a lot of like big impactful angles, and just even judging by like my own feeling and also what the chat room seems to be talking about throughout this hour and a half that we've been talking, unanimous praise for this edition of Dynamite as one that I think was both satisfying in terms of storyline and also entertaining in terms of narrative quality and also match quality as well.
It set up their summer. Like this was the big show to set up what the next 7-8 weeks are going to be, and peaking for August 25th. So very important show for the company. And
what's the rating going to be?
Well, I mean, we were talking about this today. Like this is it's 4th of July tomorrow. And, naturally television viewership may well be down tonight. So I don't know if they're going to hit this like great number tonight just with the holiday tomorrow, but we will see. Well, I guess we're going to have to wait because numbers will be delayed. So everyone's Thursday at 4 p.m. ritual is going to be delayed. But yeah, very strong edition of Dynamite overall. And match wise, I really enjoyed Danielson and PAC. I thought that was a great match that those two had.
Promo wise, I thought Willow delivered a terrific promo. Obviously Britt Baker returning did great. And her segment with Monet, I think, came across incredibly well. What else did we have here that were sort of the big things? Whatever, just listen back to the review.
Easy answer.
Yeah.
All right. If you want to sneak in a super chat, you're welcome to do so. And then we'll head to the forum and see what everyone had to say about it. And positive or negative, maybe we'll get both.
Want to start off with Jordan from the Bronx?
Jordan says, I love this episode. Hangman being the wild card was predictable. The way he was brought back was anything but. They did a great job in the last 2 weeks making Jarrett a sentimental favorite, and Hangman did a fantastic job of being a complete asshole and killing Jeff's dreams. Paige is brooding, darker, colder, and ruthless. MJF's turn, Mercedes and Britt's face-off, and Danielson's grind to the finals are all fun things to see. I miss Swerve and Tony, but it's understandable. Well, Tony was there. I mean, a small portion, segment. But she was there. It's understandable since the focus is on the tournament to create their challengers. One thing that I've not been able to get into is the EVP power trip. Tony Khan has been back and running things for weeks. Why are the Bucks still able to continue running roughshod over the show? Yeah, this is one we bring up all the time that I think needed a better explanation. Like when you look back at things, like what was our last major angle? It was destroying Tony Khan, like the one physical angle that he's done. And what was... Other than he was taken out and popped up on the NFL draft with a neck brace, like he was back within 2 weeks and he's in storyline. He is back running the show. And that to me is a major hole in that whole entire story.
I'm sure there's some sort of contract shenanigans they could explain. I'll tell you, I love the new version of the Elite together. I especially Okada. Like I don't know if you saw, he was DJ scratching his international title belt today to the Acclaim's music.
Oh, I did not see that. So that's a keeper then from Sunday.
Well, that guy is just like I love the group together. I don't love maybe a lot of the comedic tone attached to like these people that are like supposed to be in this role. Like it does feel maybe overly campy to the detriment of like my suspension of disbelief, but it's also not the main program. Like if it was like the A program on the show, I would sort of feel a bit worse about it. But for a blood and guts match, I think it's like I think it's good build. All right, let's continue. Up next we've got Annie, who says so in love with the Hangman Jarrett booking. Doing it in Chicago is also such a brilliant touch. I guess so. Yeah, I guess. I mean, did you think that having Paige return as a heel in Chicago was an intentional thing because of the CM Punk stuff?
I don't know if that was like their prime driving factor, but I think it was like I feel that this would have gotten over pretty similar in most markets the way that this was done. I just think this would have been super effective too in Memphis if you had done it. But the timing wasn't there. And this was the bigger show of the week. Yeah.
Bigger crowd. Yeah.
Brian in New Jersey, tremendous episode, pair of great matches to bookend, as well as maybe the best use of an overrun. MJF said that when he returned at Double or Nothing that he's not trusting anyone anymore, so the beatdown made sense and set things in motion for a big all-in match. Great return for the Hangman, good promos from Baker and Willow. Agreed that with Tony Khan back and Christopher Daniels being there in the end, something's got to give with the Young Bucks edicts and whatever stakes Blood and Guts may have. Maybe Tony Khan will be the fifth man.
Maybe. All right, we got a Curtis from the 519. I've been a little cold on AEW lately. The summer months get busy, the product felt a little stale, and my weekly interest in viewership has been down. I tuned in tonight mainly to see Hangman come back as he's my favorite AEW wrestler, and was left wanting another hour of AEW. That first hour flew by. Well, you should watch Rampage then, Curtis. That first hour flew by in the best way possible, and the final 30 minutes was some of my favorite AEW TV in a long time. Mercedes Britt was great, and it's great to see Britt back on AEW TV. A perfect example of why online fans should never speculate about a wrestler being off TV. You never know what they may be going through or dealing with outside of the ring. Hangman back as a heel has me excited and makes him feel fresh. MJF as a heel was peak AEW TV circa 2021, so it's great to see him pivot back in that direction. In 30 minutes of TV, AEW just got 2 mega heels for the summer and rest of the year to work with their 2 big baby faces. His question, does the Elite or Team AEW angle feel hot enough for a blood and guts match? Feels as if it's taking place more because it's that time of the year rather than having a hot program that is peaking. Feels very much like WWE doing Hell in a Cell every year and rushing matches into the cell when they aren't ready or needing it. Does it feel hot enough? So I do personally feel like my interest in AEW's matchmaking is more so led by the in-ring sort of like potential rather than like I think story led potential. But even like in terms of story, yeah, I do feel like it's big enough because for at least a good period, this felt like the biggest program in the company. Certainly like through Swerve, defending against like a Christian Cage, for instance. So I think the Elite are a big enough act, and they're also just the only stable capable of I guess having that many members that it feels natural to put them in a blood and guts, just like they were in the Stadium Stampede. So I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, you've got the main heel group that is designed for this, and you don't know what the babyface team is yet. Like we're throwing out names based on like the run-ins and such. But
when you throw in Swerve versus Page, which could be the Wembley main event, into the mix, then I think that does make it big enough.
Okay, we continue with Muggin. Turns out Adam Cole had it right. MJF is back on his bullshit. At this point, Ospreay and MJF shouldn't be the match for Wembley. Daniel Garcia getting sent to the gulag in the ending makes me want to see him face MJF instead and beat him. If that doesn't get him to the next level, what are we doing here? Main event was quintessential Ospreay. Hangman shunning the Elite was a great move. Him against Jarrett was a nail biter, and Britt's return promo about her stroke was frightening to hear. I'm glad she's healthy.
I don't know if London would agree with Muggin. As great as the angle was tonight, I think they would still prefer to see MJF versus Will Ospreay, and I sense most of the world would still prefer that match too.
Maybe Wembley can be when he emerges from the gulag.
What is a gulag?
Hard to define.
System of Soviet labor camps and accompanying detention and transit camps and prisons from the 1920s to the mid-1950s, housed the political prisoners and criminals of the Soviet Union. All right. I guess that's
a hell of a tombstone.
That's what MJF did. Yeah. Interesting. All right, let's go to Andrew. A gulag match. Blood and gulags. Okay.
Next year's Shark Week.
Yeah, that's right. Andrew from Cape Breton. My turn?
Yes.
Says that was the best Dynamite of the year. I fear the rating will tank like the Dynamite from 2 weeks ago, which was also an excellent episode. With that said, AEW needs to stay the course because they're putting out excellent television. I'm also interested in hearing from MJF on Collision, so they got a decent hook for that. The 2 main highlights for me were the segment with Baker and Monet and the match between Jarrett and Page. Monet has had good matches, but her promos haven't hit until tonight. Didn't take her long to find her groove as a heel, but all she needed was one show. All right.
We go to Mr. Kane. Michael, very entertaining episode of Dynamite. All throughout that great Jarrett Hangman match, I was waiting to see if there would be blood staining Jarrett's golden locks for that extra touch. I was surprised. There was enough blood on this match. On this show. We didn't need more. I was surprised there wasn't, but after watching the end and the decimation of Daniel Garcia by MJF, they had that red liquid flowing where it counted. The DMD CEO face-off gave me big match feels. Britt Baker looks to be in great shape. The build-up is going to be fun to watch. Willow and Statlander was a solid ass-kicking match, and I can see this rivalry growing into something with really violent and vicious stipulations. Michael just wants a lot of blood. I'm glad AEW came out and delivered tonight. Hopefully this could be a spark to a momentous run on TV before Wembley. He says the greatest crime committed tonight was Jericho depriving us of Taz's commentary during picture-in-picture on Triller TV.
Yeah, I would say like between certainly the resulting Owen Cup finalists, or I should say winners, Ospreay versus MJF, I guess like Statlander and Willow potentially, like those programs heading towards All In are all in really good shape coming out of this, and Monet and Baker, of course.
How many matches are going to be on the All In card, including the 0 hour?
30.
Okay.
Yeah. You got to double it. You know, it's a larger stadium show, so I think you got to cram as many as you can in there.
We're gonna have an overrun. Maybe that'll be the warning at the beginning.
Oh yes.
One more.
My turn. Okay, my turn. Lastly, we got a Matthew England. Maybe from England, maybe not. Who knows? But Matthew England says this was an excellent edition of Dynamite tonight. They are really getting back to the roots of AEW, which is awesome. Is this getting back to the roots of AEW? What exactly does that mean? What? Just because it's good, it's back to the roots? When it's not good, then they're leaving it. Then it's being pulled from the roots. All right. Okay. This is 2 hot crowds in a row for AEW, which they've really benefited from. This honestly felt like a reset episode of the show, which is awesome. Again, because it was good, I guess. Yeah. So you're right. I understand what he's saying. Like, you got a lot of heel turns and returns in Britt Baker, so I get that. DMD versus CEO will be awesome. Mercedes has always come off as a heel since she debuted, and it's nice to see her being solidified as such. One criticism I have is, why are the Elite still running the show, and what is the follow-up to TK being attacked 2 months ago? Are they having second thoughts on the angle and are just trying to move on from it? I know Tony doesn't want to be a TV character, but he threw that out when he put himself in the main event angle. Questions we all have. Yes.
Well, it's an unanswered one, so we will continue to ask it until it is answered. But we thank all of you for answering the call for feedback, as always, as we look for the pulse of the wrestling audience on what they thought of tonight's edition of Dynamite. But it seemed like a lot of people enjoyed the show. Some would say a classic throwback edition of Dynamite.
Yeah. Maybe he's got a great explanation. Matthew, I invite you to explain how this was roots like for AEW.
All right. Well, Wayne and I have to recharge and come back for WrestleMania 9 on Friday. So look out for that. PostWrestlingCafe.com. $6 gets you all of these extra shows throughout the month of July. G1 Climax, 2 Rewind-Aways, a review of WrestleMania behind the curtain, X-Men rewatches, and then, of course, Rewind to SmackDown every Friday, Collision Course every Saturday. So all of that and more, postwrestlingcafe.com. You can't go wrong, and it helps support Post Wrestling and all your favorite personalities here at the site.
Yeah. And again, shout out to our sponsors. Shout out to Chop Tees, sale until Sunday. Go buy yourself a hat. Support the shows that you love.
And we hope to see many of you Saturday if you're in and around Toronto. Again, wide open, 139 A Spadina Avenue, beginning at 2 p.m. Free event to meet up with Post Wrestling, Poison Rana listeners. We'll all be down there having a good time and then making our way over to the Scotiabank Arena for Money in the Bank that night. All right, that is it for all of us. Thanks for tuning in to Rewind to Dynamite. Goodbye.